Good afternoon. The committee of the whole is called back to order. Unfortunately, we don't have quorum, and I understand some of our colleagues are proceeding to the Guam Legislature Commission to file their final primary financial report that's due today. And with that, I'd like to recognize that President of Vice Speaker Tina Rosemary Barnes, Speaker Therese Terlai, Senator Chris Barnett. And as soon as we get a quorum, then we'll continue with the round two. Thank you. We're back to recess. Opposed, call back to order. We will now begin with Senator Guåhan. Senator Guåhan, do you have any questions? Hopefully not
Yes,
that
I
many.
do. Thank you.
Hopefully
Thank
be
you.
done by 5 today.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Earlier, I know Mr. Carlson wasn't here earlier, but was here yesterday and he answered these questions already, but I want to ask it again. But in regards to, first of all, the income tax is shown here on page 3, lines 9 to 24. When you add it up, I get about 420 million. But line 24 says 464 million. Page 3, lines 9 to 24, I'm sorry.
Senator, you're talking about page 3 of the revised
Yeah,
bill?
yes.
From 9 total taxes down to 24?
24, yes.
So you're talking about federal sources, sir?
Yes, yes.
Which source in particular?
Yes, sir.
Which one?
I'm just getting, actually, what I added up is 420, and then line 24 says a total of 464 million. Maybe I'm missing something here, I don't know.
What line number are you on page 3?
Line 3, lines 9 to 24.
Okay, line 3 on page 3 is 250,000 T's and gymnasium.
Line 3, lines 9 through 24. When
Line-
you add it up, yeah, it comes about around 420 million.
Okay,
But-
on line 9, it says total taxes 839, and then as it goes down,
Yeah,
It's federal.
we got to make sure we understand, okay?
okay.
Line 9 is total taxes. Letter B is a separate column with a separate amount.
Okay,
It's not like totaling, if I'm correct, Olby? It's not totaling going down the list, okay? So you
Okay.
can't mix it. You got to separate. Line 10B is federal resources. It comes up to total 77 million. Then you go to the next line, which is line 15. Use of money and property is 2,683,000. License and fees is 4,403,000. Okay? So which one were you wanted to question so that they can follow what your question is specific?
okay. Let me get back to this because that's not as important as these other ones. But let me get back to that. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
all right.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay. So basically, I'm more interested in the BPT. Now, Mr. Carlson, there was no. Yesterday, you said the BPT is not even being considered to be rollback, right? Is that pretty much?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. BPT at this point is about 391 million?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, okay. So a rollback from to 4% or 5% would be about a 20% reduction, or about $78 million in revenue reduction, right?
You're doing the calculation, but it sounds right.
Okay. Now, based on that, the $78 million reduction, what would be the impact on the budget, of the projected budget, with a $78 million decrease in collections over this next year? Rollback.
You'd have to do this whole thing all over again. The whole thing would have to be done all over, and then you would have to take $78 million of general fund funding for public health, public safety, public education, administration, economic development. Everything would have to be redone by OFG.
Okay. Now, should the BPT be rolled back, okay? Again, roll back to 4%. Does the government estimate that all of the foregone revenue will be cost savings to consumers?
No, sir. We've experienced this before when it was at 6%. There was no cost savings, even when we did visible BPT. And you were supposed to be able to see it on your receipt when the 6% was rolled back to 4%.
Okay.
There was no reduction in
Okay.
in pricing.
So So I guess that answers my next question. What will be the best, your best estimate on the price reduction on the impact as a result of a BPT rollback? Zero? Zero? Zero, okay. Okay, on the special funds now. We see a drastic reduction in special funds being collected year to year, such as the Healthy Futures Fund, right? And manpower development. Does this mean that the cost of maintaining services then funded by these special funds will be shifted to the general fund, or other, or the services be reduced then?
Services that are funded statutorily by the Healthy Future Funds, OFB has done a good job in being able to provide general fund subsidies, similar to what we had to do during COVID for customs and for GVB. We provided general fund subsidies because of the lack of tourism, which funds those agencies primarily, not from the general fund, but we had to give them subsidies. So the subsidy that is included for these agencies, I think, has been adequately addressed by OFB in this budget, so that there will not be a cessation of services provided to the people. And I think the example was behavioral health.
Now earlier, I know Mr. Mr. Guerrero said that, of course, the reduction in that is that more people are switching from smoking to vaping. And there's a reduction that, Mr. Guerrero, is that what you said, right? Basically, that that was due to the shift on the habit.
I can assume, Senator, that's the cause of the decrease in the Healthy Future Fund, yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, I see that we're collecting like $2 million for the E911 funds. That's page 4, line 11, right? Yeah, right? Yeah. Over the years, you know, these funds have not necessarily been used for the intended purpose. Are we being straight with the contributions now and the federal requirements now that by getting these funds to build the local system?
Yes, sir. As a matter, I can attest personally that the system is not only in place, but robust and as good, if not better, than comparable systems in the United States.
Is that in place already, or is that being built as we speak?
It's already in place, but it's going to require additional funding for maintenance. But rest assured that the system does work well, and is serving its purpose. There is an ongoing maintenance cost for.
Do you know what that estimated maintenance cost will be annually?
No, I don't, sir. But maybe OFB has more information. It might be embedded in the fire department's budget.
Oh, okay. No, because I mean, you know, that's one of the things again that we need to maintain. I mean, unlike other maintenance situations that we don't maintain and then it goes to pot, or you know, at least the system will last longer if you maintain it. I mean, even if it's a little bit outdated, as long as you maintain it, it will last longer. I guess like we did with the Motorola system, that we did that for the longest time, but I guess maintained it and were able to, I guess, MacGyver it to last as long as it did, right? Yeah. Okay, last question is the source of the streetlight fund. Is the car recycling fee assessed by rev and tax on an annual basis. Is that true? Continue to be true?
I forget, is that from vehicle registration or something?
A registration, yeah. Car registration?
Yeah. Mr. Burns said yes.
Yes. So we shouldn't have a problem then, right, with streetlights? Because we collect that annually? I mean, everyone renews their vehicle and it comes out of that, so we shouldn't have any problems with with lighting up our streets, right?
Certainly for the last couple of years, we haven't exceeded the streetlight budget. Not, as you drive around the island, of course, not all the streetlights are
No, I
working.
know, but I mean, what I'm saying is if we're annually collecting that, we really shouldn't have a problem. I mean, I can understand over the years, but moving forward, we should be able to start getting that in place and lighting up the streets and all that, right?
For the last 2 years, we've not had a problem.
Okay. That's all I have for right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Long. Senator Tadegui, you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back, Lester. There was one question in particular that I wanted to ask you, if you can explain to me the 4 cents that you were on the aviation fuel that this is for the airport. You mentioned that is, of course, by FAA is required that we start putting that 4 cents aside. Can you tell me what that 4 cents is going to be used for? That will go to the airport?
General aviation requirements of the airport, I don't know specifically what they use it for, because this year was the first year that they started receiving the money. We just needed to be in compliance. For years, we tried to get some kind of compromise from, this requirement, but it became painfully obvious that we're being required now to do this.
But we don't know exactly what it's paying for.
No, I don't, ma'am.
Has the airport given you any idea?
It just goes to them as revenue, ma'am. Quite frankly, I don't know.
It just goes to the airport for revenue.
Yes.
Okay, it'd be nice to know what that money is being paid for. So this is something new that we're going to have to set aside. So it'd be nice to know where it's going. A lot of the comments that were made earlier about using ARP funding, creating programs, and it's, there was a warning by several agencies like NCSL, the Pew Group, certain people who talked about ARP funding, and warned people that it should be spent on one-time assistance, not something that would have to be sustained moving forward. And we're starting to see that we are subsidizing these ARP funds that have been taking care of other areas. I went to look at the repository, the cultural repository, and in the last 2 years, the ARP funding in 2023 and then 2024 has utilized 1.6 million every year for that. Now we're looking at the OHM homeless shelter area, which does not comply to what all these other states and territories have been told to be very cautious about, and funding something that would be sustainable. We are not in a position to figure out what is considered the new norm once all these federal funds are finished. I read an article in the NCSL that some states have returned some of these funds because there's really not much else they can utilize it for that it's supposed to be used for. And they definitely don't want to get themselves into trouble by creating programs that they would have to sustain. Again, we have to think of the new norm. What is going to be the new norm? Being conservative is very important, I think. But when we start forgetting about the programs that we've had in the past that we're trying to sustain, things like public health to help those who are the homeless in public health, and now we're opening up something else instead of funding areas that already been established. So I'm very concerned about that, especially I brought up earlier about the village road and street repairs, only bringing up 500,000 additional from last year, just 500,000. That's not enough. We all know that. It's more than 1.5 million per mile now to repair. And still, we have not addressed that and other areas. Earlier, we talked about with OFB. Can you tell me again what the 4.2 for UOG, the additional 4.2 for UOG will be for? What is that supposed to fund again? Salaries, I think it was salaries you mentioned, and is that capital improvements or operations?
It's supposed to help out in the operation, the USDA loan, the outright for the appropriations from the engineering annex.
So it's a capital improvement?
Yes.
Okay. And once again, just so, oh, let me let you wait.
I'm sorry?
No, I think some additional information came. Go ahead. No, you're good?
No.
We're good with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It was mentioned earlier why we are lower in tax refunds than what the administration had appropriated for tax refunds and what we had put out in 2024, much lower. Can you explain again as to why this is done for tax refunds?
The overall, Senator, if you notice, what we're setting aside for the provision for tax refund is the same. What it is was the allocation of what we are getting from refunding by the federal government for the category of child tax credit and the additional tax credit. It went up roughly by about 10 million. So it was just an offset between what we're being refunded by the federal government versus what we would appropriate normally. Because last year we appropriated about 54 million or 57 million. We just brought that back down to about 44, and the offset was shifted over to what we hope to receive by the federal government on those refunds.
If I'm not mistaken, Steve, we did this last year. Yes. You know, we prepared because the federal government, you know, subsidized on the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. In fact, they increased it the first time they decided to take over this. They increased a little bit on the child tax credit, additional tax credit, right? So I don't understand why it would be different this year when they've already started this. Not reimbursement, credit up front. They gave us the money up front. That's why it was in a lockbox that we couldn't touch, right? That money was there. So I still don't understand how that it would change.
Information we receive from revenue tax,
Yeah.
they're the one that inform us that, you know, there is a possibility that we might get this increase in FY2025. So we just budgeted accordingly with that information.
That you might get this increase, and how much is that? 10 million? Is that the 10 million you're talking about increase?
Based on the trend for the last couple of years, this basically was the average over the last 3 years. So that's the amount we used for 25, with the concurrence of revenue and taxation.
Okay. Okay. I think I have one more question, and then I should be done. We talked about no, I think everything else right now, for now, you know, but I want to thank OFB because it's the last session. You guys probably, well, you'll be here. Thank you, Lester and Mr. Byrne, for being here today and providing some answers to some of our questions. I'm pretty sure it's probably not going to stop here, but hope you leave that channel open so that we can call if we have any questions for you as well. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Senator Fisher, do you have any no questions? We'll just go past Senator Roy, Senator Dwayne. Now, Senator Parrish, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Please be mindful, my colleagues that are out there, if you're not here and we're going to pass you, you don't get another round. We'll end it. Senator Parrish, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the panel. Just a couple questions regarding federal funds. So we know the ARPA funds have to be, encumbered by this year, the end of this year, is that correct? And then spent by 2026, the end of 2026, okay. And then regarding other federal funds, are we at risk of leaving federal funds due to a timeline?
Everything here on page 3, you're fine. There isn't any issues with anything that you're appropriating with respect to the items on page 3 under federal sources.
Yeah, but this is also, the question also goes to federal funds that are not listed on this budget.
We try really, really hard to make sure that we don't return any federal funds. We encourage agencies to seek extensions for grants that they are, the deadline for obligation is coming up, so we highly encourage, and quite frankly, the federal government has been very good about providing extensions for grants. So it's something that we monitor, something that we encourage. Last thing you want to do is give back the ability to spend federal dollars.
Okay, thank you. And could we get a listing of what, like a snapshot of what federal funds and their timelines, I guess, without knowing whether they're going to give an extension? And, you know, I guess obviously we want the agencies to seek an extension, but could we get a listing of what we currently have and the upcoming deadlines, knowing well that there possibly could be extensions if the grant allows for it?
We provided that list in the executive budget request in January.
Okay, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you can remind me, what was on that list that might end this year?
I don't recall if there's a listing of expenditure deadlines associated with the identification of the under the heading of federal program inventory. I don't believe that I'm not really sure whether or not I have something that I issue to you guys right off the top of my head. I'm being texted by my staff that there's a federal receipts report that we provide. So therein might be the answer to the question. I'm kind of drawing a blank right now, but trust me, we don't like to give back federal funds, so we try real hard.
Yeah, I understand, but if your office can provide that info, that would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, thank you. Okay, in regards to lapse funds, I know this question's for OFB. In relation to the last report, was there a report given by the agencies on how they use their lapse funds for the past budget cycle? I know we're waiting for this budget cycle, but was there any reports provided by different agencies regarding their usage of the lapse funds?
Senator, my office is not purview to that type of report anytime after the fiscal year ends. Normally that report will be shown in the financial statement, either in the CER for that fiscal year and or the CER going forward in the next fiscal year. But in terms of whatever lapses are available by the departments by the end of the fiscal year, one, that won't be known until the end of the fiscal year, and two, my office is not purview to that type of information.
Okay,
but we can draw it out of the system when the system is up and running. But then again, that is just purely between appropriations, allotments, expenditures, and any other reserve balances they may have. And that's the number we kind of come up with. Just bear in mind there's encumbrances that need to be considered. Encumbrances don't happen until maybe, liquidation of encumbrances until I believe December 31st of the following year. So there's a lot of things that are fluid in order to get that so-called available balance. But as of this point, I don't have that information.
Okay, I do recall, I don't know if it was this last budget, but they were supposed to send reports to the governor and the legislature, so that they did not send anything. Okay. Maybe for BBMR and Director Byrne, do you have any information regarding the past cycle? So maybe that can help us understand what's coming up for lapse funds. Were there any lapse funds, a breakdown of the lapse funds by agency, and how, if they were given the authorization to expend it or spend it, what was the breakdown of their expenditures? Was that information available to you?
Senator Perez, I don't believe we do a quote-unquote lapse fund report because we've asked OFB to not allow for continuing appropriations because they're kind of a headache, because we really don't know until much later in the next fiscal year what actually was lapsed, because when we close the books, it takes a while for DOA to reconcile pay obligations up until September 30th, and then provide information to the auditors to begin the audit. Then we would know what it is that is quote-unquote lapsed or possibly available for continuing use. So it gets to be burdensome, and you know, if somebody can maintain, oh no, we lapsed this and that, but the check and balance that we have is really the audit, and you know, we've been having some issues with the timeliness of the audit, so we look at fund balances that are verified by the auditor, and whether or not those fund balances have indeed positive amounts, or is Mr. Byrne required to address those particular fund balances so that they don't show negatives. There's a lot of intricate dancing that he has to take care of once we understand where we are with a particular agency and the fund source. So when you guys appropriate $100 for use by somebody, and then you allow for them to have continual access to that, it's not as easy as people think it is to be able to access anything that's quote-unquote lapsed. So, and we don't do a report on lapse funds.
But you do have a cumulative amount in that fund, which maybe we can estimate how much is lapsed. We don't know exactly what the year it came from, but we can identify, based on what we appropriate today, how much was lapsed. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Byrne confirmed that we won't really know for sure what is and isn't quote-unquote available until after the audit's done, after we've addressed all the encumbrances against the fund, against the appropriation to, you know, so, I mean, we don't have the 23 audit yet. The last audit that we have is fiscal 22, and we don't expect fiscal 23 to sometime in, I think, October. So, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we would have to go back and look at the 22. Hopefully, yeah, we don't know if that information is up to date too as well, whether that still exists. So I guess, how can we better track that? Is there a way to track that better? Maybe for both parties, OFB and BBMR, or Director Byrne?
A schedule that will give you an idea. They're not necessarily lapse funding, because you have to adjust for encumbrances that aren't included in the fund balance, but are included in the budgetary balance, right? If you look at the, it's required supplementary information, the schedule of revenues expenditures by department and changes in fund balance, budget and actual, which is on page 162 of the fiscal 22 audit, it does show you the original budget, the adjusted budget, and the actual expenditures and the difference.
We're basically relying on the audit then, at this point. Is that what you're saying?
No, because you have to adjust for these encumbrances that are part, that are included in the year they're encumbered, but they're not included in the year of expenditure until spent. And that's just the way accounting works. So you have to make that adjustment. And there is a number on the bottom of the schedule that shows that.
Okay. So we don't, at this point, we don't know how many funds are lapsed by these agencies. We're kind of running blind at this point.
Yeah, I think the amount that's lapsed generally has decreased each year because agencies have certainly become more aware of the need to spend funds, and indeed those agencies come before you and say, we need funds. So generally lapsing is not as common as it used to be.
Okay. I guess that leads to another question, or a couple questions. So the FMIS system. We know there have been hiccups in getting that fully implemented. Would this system assist with identifying lapse funds on a real-time basis?
Yes, but please bear in mind that funds really don't lapse until the end of the financial year. But yes, it will.
Okay. And also in regards, so we know, I guess, coming with a budget, we know what's going to needs to be or going to be spent by these agencies, which leads to procurement, planned procurement. I know your Department of Administration that's one of your other arms, is the procurement division. What do you have in place to ensure that you know, these agencies are prepared to solicit so that they're not, you know, there's no delays in obtaining these services or goods? I know it's part of the budget. I believe it's one of the miscellaneous provisions. And I just wonder what you have in store to ensure that procurement is not delayed and therefore there's no lapses. I think that's maybe one of the issues of lapses.
Yes, it's been in the budget for several years that departments, agencies are supposed to advise GSA of their planned procurements for the ensuing year. Generally, they don't do that. And GSA was not really in a position to do much about it because they weren't fully staffed. We're one member short now at GSA, and we're in the process of recruiting that. So we are looking at a much more robust GSA with full staffing. So actually I was talking to the acting CPO yesterday about this, and she is going to make some arrangements to make sure, and certainly circulate departments, to make sure they do respond to that requirement that's in the budget, and I'm confident that it will form part of this budget bill too, that so they do respond so we can better plan, at least for the large procurements.
Okay, thank you. And then in regards to health insurance, I know self-insurance was contemplated or utilized because the thought of that we were going to save the government money. Has this materialized?
The estimates that we thought it was going to cost are pretty much in line. Those estimates were based upon saving about 10 to 14 million over a fully insured plan. The estimates are coming in pretty much online. But please bear in mind that we're not at the end of the year yet, and like any insurance, it takes a while for costs to come through. But that's our best estimate at the moment.
Okay, so we're not looking at increasing the amount Are we looking to increase the appropriations? My understanding that we are appropriating more money for self-insurance for retirees.
Medical costs have increased across the board. So in fiscal 25, the estimates have increased because we expect a significant increase in medical costs in fiscal 25. The main difference on the retiree health increase was because previously the figures did not take account of defined contribution retirees. They only included the defined benefit retirees. So that was the reason why that particular appropriation was always coming up short. So we've now included the cost of the insurance for the DC retirees.
Okay, but we're still seeing an overall savings.
Compared with a fully insured plan, right? But medical costs generally have increased, and they continue to increase. GMH put up their room and board rates. Pharmaceuticals continue to increase across the, across, I guess, the world. Pharmaceutical costs are increasing. So yes, it's cheaper than a fully insured rate, but we can't avoid a medical cost. That's just what it costs.
Okay. This question's for OFB. So have you looked at the different federal funds out there and see if it can basically either, I don't know if the correct word is replace what is appropriated locally? Because I see there's some duplication in some of these federal funds and what they're funding.
Senator, if the federal funds require any type of local matching, that is where OOB really gets involved and makes sure that the local match is provided for. If these federally funded programs are 100%, basically that's the responsibility of the agencies, the department themselves, to see how best to utilize those funds. But we don't consider those funds as part of the operational costs when it comes to appropriating local funds. We only appropriate local funds that is required of local matching.
But I guess the analysis, have you done the analysis to see if these federal funds, if there's a duplication with the federal funds and local funds?
To my knowledge, Senator, when the departments and agencies apply for a federal grant, those grants are specific for a purpose and can only be used for that intended purpose as applied for. It is not to augment locally funded programs. And to my knowledge, I don't know of one program out there that duplicates a local program.
Okay. Going back to the grants and aid, federal grants and aid, so you mentioned that what only appears in the budget, it has to do with matching. But does that also include programs that are looking for, let's say, like institutional status? So by putting in more money, we're going to get more money in return, that kind of thing. Because I noticed there's some programs in here that didn't have that federal amount that's included. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, to my knowledge, the federal grants and aids that are being applied for are existing programs. I have not seen one in the budgets this year for 25 that's requesting additional or new local dollars to match a federally funded program. So in other words, what I'm saying is that what we're appropriating in the budget for as local match are for programs that are currently being operated and administered by the departments and agencies.
Okay, thanks. This question's for Director Byrne. What do you think is fiduciary responsible in regards to purchase orders? So how much would you, I guess, recommend the limit for a purchase order for any particular agency?
So are you referring to what they can order or the total of a purchase order?
Per purchase order, yeah. Or I guess per purchase order? Yeah, how much would you think is a responsible amount?
Well, we're actually looking at this now as to where we draw the line between what GSA should be responsible for and what the agency should be responsible for. The biggest issue we've had generally with agencies or compiling or submitting purchase orders is the turnover of personnel in the agencies and the turnover of information between individuals in that agency in order to complete a procurement. So we're actually looking at it right now. I don't have a number as I speak because we really haven't finished our analysis on that. Part of it, of course, was driven by the fact that we didn't have a fully staffed GSA, and we now do. So everything is moving quickly. So that would suggest that we should start bringing more back into GSA because they're better equipped to do this. But it's an ongoing inquiry which we expect to finish in about 3 weeks.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate if you can update me on that.
Of course.
Thank you. I think those are my questions. So, Since Masi to the panel, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Madam Speaker, you have any questions? Yeah, you're it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so the FY23 audit is not going to be ready until October.
The date is September 30th.
Do you anticipate that there are any unexpended revenues from FY23?
Well, I think that question is answered in the CRER best than in the
At
audit.
the end of the
right?
year, at the
Yeah.
end of the 23?
Yes.
Has that been appropriated since then?
Well, this body has appropriated fiscal 23 revenues, yes,
23, the excess?
from excess revenues, yes.
Okay. So it's fully expended, you think? I can't remember the balance at the end, what it was.
If you give me a few minutes, I'll take a look.
All right.
I believe you appropriated.
Okay. So Mr. Carlson saying we appropriated all the excess that we showed on the CRERs. So I'm just trying to figure out some things here in the big picture. For example, with these revenues, we're funding some increases to some agencies, not all agencies, and some agencies such as GMH, they said they wanted 73 bare minimum for critical services when they came in. The governor had requested that they get about 31.8 million, and this is of course before GMH came in. The governor said 31.8, GMH said 73 million, and OFB gave about 37.7 million. So from what GMH had presented, they would be 35 million short according to this budget. And then the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center would be about $483,000 short from what they had requested. And I'm just trying to find out, let me start with, this is the same for DICID and public health. Well, for DICID, public health, and Guam Behavioral Health, why is OFB giving less than the governor had requested?
Well,
Well, for some of those agencies, we gave lower than what they request from the governor's level. But if you look at it from current year level, we did give them an increase. We did, of course, we adjusted due to the new retirement rate. And of course, some of these agencies were funded by special funds that weren't fully tracking. For example, Guam Behavioral. The Healthy Future Funds wasn't tracking, so we had to, supplement it with the general fund. However, we did have some cutbacks due to retirement and vacancies as well. So we just did our best, and then we funded to a certain level, which is over the current year level.
It's a little bit over the current levels, but not much. So, well, okay, for public health, yes. So they started off with, the governor's request was 39 million over the current levels, right? It looks like the bulk of that special funds. But regardless, 39 million over, but then when you go to what OFB did, then they went down again by 76,000. So you're reducing it based on tracking of Healthy Futures Fund, but these are our health agencies. So if our Healthy Future Fund source is not enough, we have to supplement it with general funds, don't we? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what are we, they're giving us a list of what's going to be cut by these numbers. And I think we need to go based on what services they're providing versus what the Healthy Futures Fund is tracking. So just again, why is public health less than what the governor had requested for them? Oh, Mr. Chair? Yeah.
What was the question again, Madam Speaker?
Public health, why did OFB give less than what the governor had requested for public health? The governor requested an increase for public health, but OFB is lessening that increase for public health.
For public health, no, Senator, we gave the exact same amount requested. Oh, I'm sorry, let me, if anything, again, any reduction may have been to the retirement rate. In their submission, what was submitted was about a 32.35%, but when the actuary was done, statutory rate became 30.77, so that could have just been an adjustment. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then what about Guam Behavioral Health? It looks like the OFB is giving 2.2 million less than what the governor had requested as an increase for public health. I mean, sorry, behavioral health. They're still getting an increase, but it's less than what the governor had requested for behavioral health.
So based on Guam Behavioral Health, of course, we're trying to give them up to the level that they needed. However, there are some adjustments that we made due to the adjustment in retirement rate, which is about 200,000. Then, of course, the vacancies was a portion of that. And then, of course, we felt some items we could have reduced, like equipment and supplies. So that was one of the factors to the reduction from the governor's level.
They say that we're not able to fund the expanded detox and rehab services without that, and the 18% increase in nurses' pay plan, and those are the bulks, the big ones. But let's get back. So DICIT is the same. So DICIT, OFB's budget, is asking for $183,000 less than what the governor asked for, and the governor had asked for $1 million less than last fiscal year. So how could you explain those decreases?
Again, Senator, for that, DICIT was also slightly adjusted for their retirement rate.
By $1 million?
Let me see. No,
So the
no,
governor's
definitely not.
request was $1 million less for DICIT.
One moment.
And then yours was 183 less than the governor. Or maybe if Mr. Byrne or Mr. Carlson could explain why the governor's request was $1 million less for DICIT than last year?
Similar to what Ms. Llewellyn is talking about, it appears that there are a number of vacancies that, you know, we couldn't just justify funding because of the length of time that they were vacant. You've had a standing appropriation for job coaches for, I think, 4 years now. I mean, I know it's a nominal sum, but the whole intent was to be able to get one-on-one aids to people that really needed help. And they haven't been able to utilize that funding, even though we're trying to encourage them. While it says job coaches, it could be a disability aid.
I think the job coach was just about a couple $100,000, but this is $1 million.
But more to my point,
Okay.
trying to use job coaches as an example, there remains a lot of vacancies, and those vacancies have been there for a number of years. So it appears that what we're doing, consistent with what OFB is doing, is just providing funding for necessary operations, warm bodies, and recruitments in progress.
I don't know, it's disturbing to me because those are all our 3 public health agencies getting either less than what the governor had asked that they get, which is amazing to me after everyone else is getting more, but particularly GMH. So how are we going to deal with GMH is coming to us saying 73, this is GMH, this is your administration, 73 million, their bare minimum critical services. The governor only accounted for 31.8, OFB's only accounting for 37.7. Are we saying the 35 million is not necessary for GMH? And these amounts are 37.7 over FY24. That doesn't even account for the 30 million extra that we had to give them in FY24. So if we added that, it would be worth like 67 million. No, it would be, we were giving them no different than 2024. I don't know. But GMH, Mr. Chair, Mr. Byrne, GMH, you guys were only asking for a $1.6 million increase from FY24, not including the 30 million that we had given them.
I wasn't involved in how those figures were compiled, and I know that GMH asked for something over 70 million because they said that they were unable to match their costs. There has been some discussion lately about how they might reduce their costs and increase their revenues, but this has been a discussion even since that I was there about how or whether or how much Guam should subsidize this public hospital. They put up their rates, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, which did impact the government health insurance costs, because the government health insurance has to pay for those raised room and board rates. Every time that GMH comes and sits in this building, there's a discussion about their revenue collections and whatever they might spend, especially on physicians, which is a large expense to them because some of these physician contracts are very, very high. I hope that during the course of this year and going forward, a constructive discussion can be had about how these numbers are arrived at. But as I say, I personally wasn't involved in that. We are talking to them under this review committee about whether they should reduce some services in order to reduce costs, but that has health insurance indeed it has health impacts, right? If those services are no longer offered on the island, then patients have to go off island. And that's a policy decision that everybody has, I guess, to look in the face and take.
Well, I thought they were very clear that if they didn't get the 73, then they were going to have to cut certain services, right? Those costs, by cost meaning services to the people of Guam in order to make do. But you heard their presentation. It was after the governor's budget was submitted. So has the governor proposed, or are you proposing any changes to the GMH portion? None? None.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
the OFB will respond to the questions that you're asking, because they do meet up with the agency whenever they're discussing their budget so that it's kind of acceptable. Vanessa?
Yes. So Speaker, to your question, for OFB's analysis, we did increase GMH about 7 million. We took in consideration, of course, what they were requesting and, of course, what the governor was requesting as well. Of course, we decided to just increase them just slightly over the governor's, even though I know it's not as much as they need, but that's the level we gave them.
I know, I'm just asking, how do we justify that with them threatening to shut services on us, and then we give other agencies 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, and GMH got overall an increase of 1.6 from the governor and 5.9 from OFB, so together about 7, like you said, versus all these other agencies, probably less critical, getting huge increases, like almost $10 million, several of them. I mean, the others some are critical, but some not so much. I mean, Mr. Chair, how are we going to deal with this? Are we saying to GMH then that go ahead and shut these services, or are we going to look at some supplemental budget for them? Because this is not including, just confirm, this doesn't even include, when we say we're giving them 7 million more than FY24, that doesn't even include the 30 million extra that we gave them in FY24, right?
No, we didn't factor that in.
Yeah, so we're actually giving them $23 million less than what we gave them in FY24 total, right? 30 minus the 7 extra, it would be $23 million less to GMH than we gave to GMH in FY24, which everybody seemed to agree was critical, necessary at the time, even the governor signed that. So I don't know, it's just hard for me to understand how we're going to jump around up and down on GMH. We have to be consistent. They laid it out. They have a million problems, including collections, including, salaries perhaps, but we've been, it's you that have been increasing nurses' pay, which I think we need to do, and we can't go back on those things, and their Medicare rates are not resolved yet. They won't be resolved in FY25 either.
Probably not, although we're going to do our very best, because that's an obvious area to look at. But the 30 million, Speaker, was meant to pay for all their outstanding receivables and bring them to a level playing field. So that should have been, I can't say that it is, but that should have been a one-off in order to pay off their payables.
All right, well, they did, I think they asked for 73, and what is it, the total? They're 35 million less than what they asked for, right? We're giving them 38? Yeah, so we're giving 38, according to OFB's budget, it's giving them 38, they asked for 73. That's just huge. That's almost double. So, I don't know. Mr. Chair, I feel like we need to reconcile this somehow. Do you have any proposal as to how, unless you don't believe their estimates, how can we help them to resolve this? Do you not believe their estimates, Mr. Carlson, that they need 73 to conduct the bare minimum critical services, or they would have to cut services?
I don't know how to respond to that, Speaker. It seems every time that they come before the legislature with a request to get supplemental fundings for vendor payments to get caught up and then stay above water, a few months down the road, they're coming back asking Mr. Byrne, asking me for additional supplemental funding. So I understand firsthand how good they are, trust me. I've had firsthand experience on the great services that they provide, but we're talking about budgetary control. We're talking about collecting on people like me who have gone into the hospital. I'm not really sure that the best foot is being extended in that regard to the degree that we expect. They're an autonomous agency. They're required to be self-sufficient, but I don't see the same effort administratively as I do firsthand, having been a patient.
Mr. Chair.
Madam Speaker, you know when we did the oversight and they identified their shortfalls, and then we were able to find them 30 million. I think one of the keys here is actually having them come to terms exactly what are they doing to close the hole, because they identified where their shortfall is when they have overstaying of patients and stuff like that. And once they come to that, then we'll be able to sit down and say, okay, where can we assist you? And we take a look at the administration and any excess funds, and then we just come to terms and say, okay, we need to give you something. And when we reach that point, then we'll know, because I understand where you come from. There's 30-some million. But at the same token, it's almost like throwing money down a well, and we're never going to fill the well. And we need to find a way where they can close the well so we know where we're at, and then we can reach the surface, because it's never going to happen.
But Mr. Chair,
It's
it was
almost
a
impossible.
year ago, one
Yes.
year ago, when they established this team to help GMH close those holes. So saying now today that we can't give them a budget until they close their holes is
No.
not going to work. They're a hospital. We have to help them give the services and in the same time close the holes. But we can't say we're not giving you a budget till you close your holes.
No,
And 30 million is going to be very hard to find if we can't find it now in revenue. We have to deal with it in revenue.
Well, one of the things we won't be able to find it in, because we're talking about where we're at right now. If we go beyond chapter 1 and we want to start deleting from other agencies, that's where the impact's at. Now, if there's a move to increase 30 million and give them, then we decide it then. But right now, I understand where you come
Well,
from.
do you not agree with their estimates that they needed 73 million, or they would have to cut critical services?
I'm not going to say I disagree that they need, and I'm not going to say I agree with what they need. Because every time I look at their books and I sit down with OB and we go over it, I'm like, it's similar to DOE. Every end of the year, there's $10, $15 million of unfilled position that should have went to where their operation should have gone. But no, because they need it. And that's why I'm saying I'm willing to work on figure out where we need to go. Because we need to fix the hospital. We need to square it away, because the people of Guam are waiting for that answer. But I have no doubt on that one, Madam Speaker. If we have a solution today, then we'll come to terms with our colleagues and we just decide it. And we can move on it, because it's going to be rough. I mean, I wish there was an additional 30 million to give them. But there's going to be other agencies going to say, can I get at least 2 million there?
I know, we're giving 10 million increase to UOG, $4.48 million increase to GACS. We're giving the GMH $7 million increase from last fiscal year, not counting the 30 million that they needed as supplemental. It's not making sense. It's looking like we are intentionally trying to hurt them instead of help them. That, I don't know. Unless we don't believe their numbers, then you guys have to tell me why. I mean, we were in the same budget hearing, and Dr. Prims was looking like, they know they have issues, and they were trying to deal with them and show us very clearly and transparently what they are and how they were going to move forward.
Understood, Madam Speaker. But as we move along in the budget, we identify, we can put a bookmark on the agency and then come back and then decide as the body how much we want to reduce from each agency, and then we identify that it'll go to GMH. I have no problem with that one, as long as the body will agree, because we need a vote of 8 to move any funding.
Yeah, well, my issue is that if we don't have a meeting of the minds here with the administration doesn't believe they need any more money, OFB didn't believe they needed any more money, and now we're going to have to cut other agencies' budgets just to get them more money. It's like, it's backwards. This is our hospital.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr.
Understood. Madam Speaker, before I move to Senator Barnett, Llewellyn's got an answer for the DICIT question.
Yes, Senator, so looking at the difference of the million is really because of the matching for the federal grants. There's a lesser, less federal grant matching. So that's mainly, and then when I reduced from executive budget requests, again, it's the retirement rate, and I only funded partial of the vacancies.
Okay, Cito Smasi.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Cito Smasi. Good afternoon to the panel. Thank you for being here. Biba Betness. I guess I just first want to start a similar vein as the speaker's line of questioning, but just relative to the Guam Department of Education. And so in the governor's budget submission, a status quo budget was submitted, but maybe Mr. Berner, Mr. Carlson can attest to, was that just because GDOE's budget was late?
When we submit an executive budget request, they're lumped in with other people. So we give you the executive line agency budgets, and we have a set aside for folks like DOE.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So I guess this question is for OFB. GDOE, as we all know, was late with their budget submission, but it was eventually submitted, and their request was for $303 million. And I have to admit, I was a little surprised when we got hands on the budget, because in the hearing there had been what I believe was a commitment to $303 million. And so to have this budget come in at $256 million, significantly short of the $303 million request, and only an $8.3 million increase from last fiscal year. I just kind of have to ask OFB, what was the reasoning, cause, justification for the disparity in these amounts?
The way we did the budget for GDOE is, of course, it's the largest agency that we have to factor to. Some of the considerations was the level that we're at. That's how we always start the budget, starting with the current year level. From there, we decide whether or not, there's vacancies that we could fill, if there's any other rates that we need to change. For example, during the FY2025, there was a huge disparity in the retirement rate costs that cut them already by $2 million. And then just considering also with the governor's level, we took that into consideration, and then we felt that it was a good level to start at. However, they're based on meetings with GDOE every month for the EFSC meetings. Just hearing from them, they, based on the level of their expenditures, some, for them, they are anticipating some lapse funds, so we put that into consideration as well. And that's how we got our level.
Thank you. I watched the tape of the hearing, and I thought we had a commitment from the chair. In fact, we ran the hearing back several times, and what was said was, we're good with $300 million. So again, I was just kind of taken aback by this significant change. But the superintendent saying $256 million isn't even enough to pay the help, so we're gonna have to figure something out there. Can you, the increases though, pleased to see the increases for public safety, specifically with the Guam Police Department, is seeing an increase of $10.9 million. Can you kind of explain that, Steve?
Are you referring to the 46 million increase, Senator? No, the 46 million increase. Do you want to go through the whole 46, or is there one particular item that you want to refer to?
No, so the Guam Police Department, 62.1 million, that's an increase of 10.9 million from last fiscal year, which, you know, of course, I support. Can you just maybe break down for the public what's in the increase?
Absolutely. The bulk of their increase, Senator, for FY25 is a result of that 25% salary increase that they just recently implemented. The total cost of that is roughly about $9 million. And that's basically a fixed cost that's embedded into GPD's budget henceforth going forward. So that represents almost, almost the whole amount of the increase. And also the increased funding for the cycle for FY25.
Thank you. Yeah, and so I did see that there is funding for a police cycle. We just graduated the largest and most diverse police cycle just a few weeks back. I think it was 40 graduates. And so I guess for Mr. Byrne, with this one cycle being funded in the budget, I remember in the last budget we funded 2, and I believe we were able to pull that off. So I guess just looking at recruitment and some of the challenges that DOA and GPD have had in filling these cycles, do you think that with your help, GPD would be able to field 2 police cycles in the next fiscal year?
I haven't heard, Senator, that they've asked for 2 cycles. And of course, the intent of the pay increase was to enhance retention, so you don't have to do that. According to the Chief of Police, we've had some success in retaining people as a result of that pay increase. So, yeah, if necessary, we will certainly support them, but I haven't, at this moment, heard the need.
Just logistically, do you think you'd be able to pull it off?
Well, we manage generally to do what needs to be done, so we would certainly help them, yes.
What was the total time that it took for DOA to conduct the study relative to the 25% retention pay?
How long, you mean the time that the...
Yeah, how long did it take? Was it a couple months or something?
I would say about 6 weeks. Yeah.
Are you currently working on any type of similar study for Department of Corrections?
No.
So I know that when the police colonel was running the prison, this had kind of been a discussion with some of the COs, as DOC also struggles with these retention issues. So you haven't had any requests from the director to do any kind of similar study addressing retention and retention pay at DOC?
No, I mean, I think there's been some he'd made some comments, but there's been no formal approach.
And so if that were to somehow make its way into law or the bill, or how long would it take? Would it be a similar period of time for you to complete that study?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The Healthy Futures Fund. So I know, Mr. Steve, you had said that you assumed that the drop in Healthy Futures funding, which in fiscal year 23, and just correct me because there's a lot of numbers out here, was the decrease $7 million in fiscal year 23 and then $10.5 million in 24, or were these the amounts in the fund?
That's about right, Senator. Those numbers, 7 and 10.5, projected for 25.
And so when we talk about the impact of people, because I've heard this too, right? There's no concrete data on it, but I mean, you just take a look around and you look at the number of vape shops that have kind of popped up. I mean, they're right up there with the dialysis centers, you know what I mean? But how do we, is there any way to track, because they pay GRT, they're not paying anything Healthy Futures Fund related, but is there any way that we can track looking at what they pay in GRT and kind of figure out how much we could shore up the Healthy Futures Fund if we were to tax vape in a similar way that we do with cigarettes, tobacco?
This is my own probably thought is that the difference we see in the reduction of the Healthy Future Fund is probably a good portion of that are people just moving over to vaping. And right now, since there's no laws or taxes taxing vaping, I can assume that if laws were passed and charged the fees and whatever payments, that we can make up that difference through assessing vaping charges. I can't think of anything other that would have significantly dropped the Healthy Future Fund other than the conversion of people going from cigarettes to vaping.
Right. So what were some of the peak amounts for the Healthy Futures Fund? If we go back to, I mean, vaping started taking off, what, 2020, 2021? So what kind of numbers were we looking at with, I hate to use the word robust, but with the Healthy Futures Fund that was seeing just more tax revenue captured?
We're going back at least to FY21. Total collections we received in 21 was 42.7, which is the Budget Act, is what we appropriated. So normally that's probably the average of what we were tracking over the last 3 years prior to that. In FY22, we came up with 42.8 million, 42.7 million. In FY23, went down to 40.1 million. And then, of course, in the Budget Act right now, it's down to 33 million. So, again, over the last year or so, you've actually seen a tremendous, at least 25%, if not 30% decrease in the fund itself.
Just for the public, can you tell us what this fund funds?
Yeah, some of the agencies that are funded out of the Healthy Future Fund, of course, is the Guam Behavioral Wellness. Public Health gets a portion of this fund, minute, and DOE. And then it also pays a portion of the cost for the audit for the Healthy Future Fund.
Can you provide more detail on the budget increase for the Department of Corrections, or 45.6 million, which is an increase pretty significant of 11.2?
Yeah, 5 million of that is for the Modernization Act. This is the one to get the prison up and rolling. And then 2.1 million of that is for the 25 recruits, which is in progress, with additional funding for supplies. And then the last one would be DOC, the GMH Hospital MOU, which is at 3.5 million. And then the new recruit cycle is at 1.6 million. Which is for 20 new corrections officers. And that's the bulk of the increase.
Mr. Byrne, who's the acting chief procurement officer at GSA? Is it still Mrs. Amanas?
No, Andy Kittiger. Andy Kittiger.
Huh? Are you still, I know it was described as hiccups earlier, and then we kind of had a laugh in here that wasn't really hiccups, so it may be acid reflux. But are you still experiencing difficulties with the financial management system?
Well, no. Every day, there's some improvement made. Every day, we're making progress towards getting everything transferred to the new system. We're basically caught up with payments. We're almost caught up with procurements. Many of the issues arose, now when we analyzed the problem, many of the issues arose with information that was being transferred or was embedded in the old system into the new system. We haven't transferred all payroll for all agencies yet. The schedule is that the two most complicated agencies, which are the fire department and the police department, will be transferred to the new system, the first payroll in October. The budget system, Mr. Carlson can talk a little bit about, but that's been discussed and specified as to how it will move forward. And the federal grant system is due to be implemented in the first week of September.
So I remember we had a hearing here just a few months back with the Vice Speaker, and then it was in the hearing, there's testimony about a backlog of 30,000 purchase orders, some crazy number like that. So
yes, the last number was 172.
Wow, okay. And then you had also earlier said that GSA was had leveled up in their staffing, and yeah, so how many staff do we have now working on the procurements?
8. Well, we've got one in the course of recruitment, so there's 7 moving to 8.
Are you able to tell us just on the subject of DOE and procurement, the status of the mold mitigation and the fencing?
I believe that it's gone out to bid, so okay. We're waiting for the bid. I think it's, I'm kind of guessing because I didn't look, but I think it's due in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen OFB, have you guys had any issues accessing the new financial management system the way you did the previous one, or the way you're able to access the previous one?
We still have difficulties accessing some of the modules profile, but right now, I mean, I understand, you know, the problems they're going through. I have spoken to the director, and he says that, you know, system is already up to par. It's actually working. It's just like just ironing out some of the kinks that, at least on our side, what we're trying to access so we can do what we need to do.
So, I mean, you can log in easy, no problem, and look at everything, or is it more tedious than that?
There are some modules that we're still having difficulties accessing, but for the most part, in general, everything is all right.
So you have the ability to access the system and look at the numbers and get all the information that you need?
On some things, yes. Other things, they still need to kind of like reconcile and set up within the system, but at least for the general information, we can get that. Okay. More technical stuff, like breaking down of revenues and details, we're still kind of working on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very welcome, Senator Barnett. Senator Parkinson, do you have any questions for the panel?
No questions, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Minority Leader, Senator Frank Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a discussion earlier, Mr. Byrne and Mr. Carlson, about the federal matching grants and aid, and right now we have that pegged at about $190 million. Is that the total amount? Is that the matching plus, I mean, the Guam share and the federal share combined, or is the 190 the government's responsibility? What is that? What is that figure?
I think it's the other way around. That's the federal. That's the federal match.
That's a federal match.
Yeah. And the biggest of that is Medicaid, which is, I believe, is 162 million.
164 million for public health.
For Medicaid, yes.
Okay, so this is how much money we can, the federal side, where does the match come from?
From the local appropriation, and you'll see it in the being appropriated.
I just need to understand. So this is additional monies that go to the agencies, certain agencies.
Yes, this is federal funding.
Okay, okay. And then there was the discussion, and I'm very interested in the number of programs that are 100% federally funded, understanding that that's not inclusive of the figures that are here. Do you have a ballpark figure as to what that should be? How much do we get in 100% federally funded programs?
Ballpark, I can't tell you exactly, but the federal funds that we received in fiscal 22, and I think it was about the same in fiscal 23, we're not finished, was round about 850 million. 850 million in federal,
850 million
in total federal funding, yeah, and that would include
that includes
yes,
both the cost share and the 100% federally funded? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So if we were to subtract, let's take, because this year you anticipate to receive about $190 million. So just for the sake of inflation and whatnot, 150 million. That means then that you get about $700 million in 100% federally funded programs?
Ballpark, yes.
Ballpark. Is there a way that we can find out where these programs are at? And I know you said you had it in the executive budget in your initial submission, but I mean, after about 3 iterations of this, I just told my staff, park it. But is there a way we can get that?
Senator Blas, yes, included in the executive budget, there's a portion there called the Federal Program Inventory. And it's towards the back of the document. That basically lists all federally funded programs, whether it requires a local match or is 100% federally funded, by departments in that listing. I think if you go to page 1, well, I forgot.
49?
Yeah. Is there a page number on this? I don't have the page number on the executive budget, but it's towards the back of the executive budget. You'll find a section that's called Federal Program Inventory.
Yeah, it's just the inventory, but it has no figures.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the figures.
And it has the total amounts there.
No, it doesn't. Not on this one.
Are you looking at executive budget? No, executive budget.
Oh, the executive budget. That's why I said I parked it.
No.
After about 3 iterations of this budget, I don't know which one I'm gonna. Yeah, I parked that.
You can find it.
I parked it at the office.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can get that, I don't want that to.
Okay.
Okay, we're not going to belabor that. I want to be able to see that just so that we know what we're getting. Okay, but there is a question to that. I think that in earlier discussions previous to this budget hearing, more specifically with the Office of Homeland Security and Civil Defense, there was a concern about $8.2, $8.4 million in costs that have not been, there was, first off, both programs, are 100% federally funded. Is it my understanding, Mr. Byrne, that, and this program in particular, that this is more of a reimbursement than it is upfront? I mean, you load the monies up and then you expect the reimbursement, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. $8.4 million, where did that come from? And as far as, if you have not received that and the monies were suspended, FEMA had suspended the account, how do we account for, that expenditure, and how do we intend to recoup it?
Well, okay, the answer to the first part of the question is that 8.4 or whatever, 8.3, 8.4 is a result of 3 or 4 years of monies that are expended. And this is, I guess, the answer to the second part of the question. In order to recover it, we have to expend it. So the general fund for all these types of reimbursement type grants, the general fund advances the money and we make a claim through the various federal systems, and there's about 3 or 4 of them, for recovering the money. So if the money isn't recovered, it just sticks in the general fund.
Which is my question is, how, I mean, where do we get the money to be able to, where'd the money come from?
It's just part of the cash flow.
Was there any report that was provided that that basically showed we gave this money, but we haven't gotten it back, and we're gonna, it's part of the cash flow, and so, you know, I mean, yeah, 8.4, you divide that by 3, okay, so you're talking about what, close to about 2.7, $2.6 million a year? Even if you were just to, how do we let $2.6 million a year just slide and not even?
Well, I don't think we're letting it slide. We're trying to recover it, and it's part of the overall, and the issue came up earlier, it's part of the overall audit. So we're trying to address it. It's not like it's, no one's trying to address this issue. DOA raised the issue with
I appreciate it. Thank you.
A while ago.
Yeah, I appreciate it because I saw that in the report that there was an internal audit, and you did raise the concern. I thank you for that. But you know, along those lines too, other than the 8.2, there was $910,000 of basically unallowable cost, or cost over and above what we had anticipated to be able to get. How do we cover that?
It's question cost.
That was your finding, or I think it was the audit's finding, right? It was more the local government than it was the federal government side.
Yeah, not unallowable, questioned.
Question. Yeah. $910,000.
Yes.
So when can we anticipate closure to this?
I think I answered that earlier when I was talking or responding to Senator Taitagui's questions. That
I'm going to ask you to repeat your answer. Thank you very much.
I will repeat the answer.
Okay.
It's an ongoing issue. There's a goal of providing all the info. FEMA has asked for us to provide all the information to them, and you know the responsibility is that agency to provide the information to them with a closure date of March 2025.
Okay, now that's understandable for the $32 million in question costs from FEMA. But I'm talking about the $8.4 million, inclusive of the $910,000 question cost, that was identified by you.
And that's part of the 34 million.
No, that's not part of the 34 million. 34 million was the FEMA question cost.
Yeah.
You identified 8.2 of monies that you, okay, that it was your report.
Yes, and that's part of the question costs in the Premier audit.
No, it wasn't. We have to separate because it was very clear, okay, the $910,000 in question costs and the $8.2 million or $8.4 million in unreimbursed costs. FEMA did. See, that wasn't part of FEMA's report. That was part of your report. And so I know, recognizing that, yes, you're going to have to address FEMA's $32 million question, but you yourself raised the $8.2 million question itself. So my question is, when should we expect an answer on the $8.2 or $8.4 million question.
So it is part of the same question costs. So I would hope that it would all be resolved by March 2025. If not before then, because obviously we want to recover these funds as quickly as possible.
Okay. Going to the question and concern that was brought up by the speaker on the difference in what what the administration has said would be GMH's allocation for the general fund, or these funds, and what they are looking for. What role did the Financial Advisory Group have in either the governor's submission or the GMH, the new request from GMH?
I can't answer that because I don't know where the numbers came from, but I believe the governor's submission was in the executive budget report, which was done at the beginning of the year, and that group only started to meet maybe in December of the previous year. So I doubt that any discussions that took place affected the executive budget request.
You're not part of the financial group?
Yes, but I'm saying that there wasn't enough time between the first meeting of the executive budget group, the financial advisory group, and the executive budget request for the executive budget request to be affected by the discussions.
Mr. Carlson, you had something that you want to be able to say. You turned your mic on.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Byrne is correct. We started meeting with them primarily on operational issues, the here and the now. They're an autonomous agency. They have a board. They bring their budget to the board. And that wasn't part of our discussions with them. And it shouldn't be part of the discussion since they submit directly to you. But again, we were trying to help them with their operational issues, their shortfalls, their collections, operational type improvements. That's the role that we have.
I understand and appreciate it, because that's the same reasons why GMH came to us and asked for the supplemental for the consideration of $73 million. And so, my question there is my question here. What role did the Financial Advisory Group have, if any of the discussions? And my understanding here is there has been no discussion with the Financial Advisory Group.
If the question is, did GMH ask that group or consult with that group or give advance notice to that group of their budget requests, the answer is no.
Okay. So that's, I don't think I'm going to pressure you anymore with that question, because I don't think the answer is going to change anything further than no. Okay. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Senator Blas. That being that you have ended, there's no one else in second round. We'll now excuse. Oh? Okay, thank you. All right. We'll now move and we'll now excuse the panel. Ma'am, who?
I have 138 left.
Oh, you still want to talk, Nick?
Just one question.
Only because you ended, but please do.
Just one question.
Go
Okay, and let's appreciate, before you leave, thank you very much, both entities, or all three entities. So I guess Mr. Byrne and Mr. Carlson, with the budget presented before us today, okay, recognizing as, granted it grew immensely over the last 7 months, is the budget as presented sufficient for the government to run its operations for the next fiscal year?
Yes, with the recommendations that we put forward for consideration that were in the first version, but not reflected in the second version. I really would like to see the funding restored for the cultural repository and the GPD crime lab.
That's not included in this 139, I mean, $1.3 billion budget?
It was removed, sir.
It was removed.
Yeah.
But other than that, you're
Yes, sir.
basically satisfied. How much does that cost there? 10? Actually, we can find 10 in 1.3 billion, right? Mr. Guerrero and OFB. Lord, well, because he doesn't want me to ask him the question. Are you satisfied? I mean, will this budget as presented to this body be able to allow the government to sufficiently run its operations?
Yes, Senator, as I mentioned in the beginning, although it's a conservative approach, again, we believe there's still room for surpluses, but we funded all the basic needs at the necessary level for the government to operate.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blas. With that, round 2 is completed. We will now go to round 3, which is only amendments. On Chapter 1, that's all we're discussing is Chapter 1. But be mindful, where we have 3 amendments on the web. But reminder, okay? Yeah, we'll end up taking recess. But mindful, our colleagues, the rules of engagement, if it impacts anything to do with the other than 25, it'll be ruled out of order. And if it's anything to do with 24 funds to put into this budget, it has to be accepted in the miscellaneous chapter. And then we'll entertain it then. And I have no problem with that one, but not in Chapter 1. Okay, with that, we will recess, and I'd like to thank the Office of Bureau of Budget Management and the Department of Administration and my OFB folks. Thank you for being here today. You are now excused. Thank you, sir. At least I know you're only a phone call away. Thank you. And with that, we'll take a recess. Committee of the Whole is called to order. There are, there's a total of 5 amendments on the drive. 3 have been printed. The other 2 are being printed. And they're all introduced by speaker, right? By the speaker. And we'll allow you, Madam Speaker, to identify which one you want to start with. Madam Speaker, which one did you want to start with, ma'am? Which one you want to start with?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one, I think it's being printed. So
Which one?
There's other that are being printed. One is for GMH. So this one I can start with, I guess. It says file name.
Just understand, Madam Speaker, that we're only on Chapter 1.
Yes.
Anything else for other chapters, we can't entertain till we get to the chapter. But
It's
I
on
understand where you're coming from.
Chapter 1.
As long as it's Chapter 1. All about revenue.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. And as you know, so if we're short for GMH, we have to see what we can do on the revenue side. Same with all the other things. So on the, there's one amendment here. It's called SB 236 TMTL 26. It's line 26, page 2. It's amending the business privilege tax.
Please proceed, ma'am.
All right, so that one is to amend the business privilege tax to increase it by 10 million, so from 390 to 400 million. And the Office of Finance and Budget to make technical corrections. So this will affect, of course, the total taxes. It will affect the pharmaceuticals fund that goes to GMH, and it will, make other changes in the revenue section that we can leave to OFB by this 10 million change. The intention of this was to allow $9 million to be appropriated to the Chamorro Trust survey in another chapter, but we have to, this is to increase the revenue to allow us to do that. And I think based on the testimony and based on the most recent estimate of the June CRER that they will be submitting to us, there is enough money for that. I mean, the revenues that they are receiving even this year give us confidence that we can increase our revenue by this much, and feel very confident that we will receive it in FY25. So that's the amendment, is to increase this business privilege tax by 10 million.
All right, Madam Speaker, but just understand that the next part of that amendment, when you identify line 17 on page 50, that will be ruled out of order because we're not at that chapter
I
yet.
know, I'm not, that's just
Okay.
showing you what it's intended
Where
for,
it's
and I'm hoping nobody steals the money before we get there. But
Understood.
of course, that's the risk I'm taking by trying to increase the
All right.
revenue. Yes.
Understood. Does anyone would like to speak on this amendment? Anyone would like to speak to this amendment?
It's line 26, page 2.
Line 26, page 2. Is to increase the business privilege tax by 10 million. Is anyone who would like to speak to the amendment? If there being no one to speak to them, anyone please raise your hand. Anyone like to speak? Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair, Biba Vetness. I'd like to ask the author of the amendment a question, if that's okay. How is she able to increase this by $10 million?
It's identifying the BBT to increase by 10 million, but we also have to take into account the pharmaceutical and the rainy day fund increase. So it's not, and it would not be just 10 million. It'll be a little bit more. But
No, it
your
will be
question-
10 million there, and then part of that will go to the pharmaceuticals fund. So the pharmaceuticals number and the total taxes collected would be changed. But the reason I think we're able to do this is the same reason why OFB was able to increase the revenue projection over the governor's revenue projection in the last 7 months. We've got another CRER on top of that, since they came out with their budget that shows even more revenue in this current fiscal year that we've received, that they say we are only going to increase, not decrease. So even using FY24's estimates were very safe based on actual collections, that we can collect this much in this particular tax, which is the BPT. I just lost the rev, but yeah, so that's why. And because we need to fund some of these other things, just exactly the same as how OFB was able to increase the revenue projection and increase the expenditure levels as for critical agencies. I think we are going to be able to do that if we listen to their testimony and the CRERs. We're safely able to do that for this particular tax for FY25. Business privilege tax. And again, this is still honoring all the exemptions to business privilege tax. It's only those, yes.
And so,
No, you'd have to just state your question and then show.
so if I could also ask the author, if this is a conservative move, what would be, in her opinion, the high-end adjustment?
Madam Speaker?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Can I take a 1-minute recess? I misplaced my notes. It's in another.
All right, we'll take a 1-minute
Thank you.
recess. Committee holds call back to order. Madam Speaker, on your amendment.
Susan Smasi, in response to the question, it was the testimony of Mr. Carlson that according to the July report that is going to be sent to us, that is still being refined, they have collected $1.31 billion. There is only 994 million in appropriations. And then if you take away all the other appropriations that we've made from excess funds, they still have a cushion of 27.3 million excess for FY24. That shows him that even with a $1.3 billion budget, there was $36 million cushion. And I believe his testimony was that we are still looking like we will collect more than what we are expending in this budget based on these numbers, and he doesn't expect them to decrease in the next fiscal year. They might actually increase, but so based on these, that's where I'm getting the numbers. So he said we still have, for FY24, $36 million cushion per June CRER, even with the $1.3 million budget, and that for this upcoming budget, we will expect, even with the expenditures that we have predicted already to make, or OFB has already planned to make, that we will probably, more likely, based on this, still be able to make more, 10 million, easy.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your inquiry, Senator Barnett?
Mr. Chair, yes, it does. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess just as a newcomer to this entire process, I guess I approach it with, the skepticism of some of the older colleagues in here who I think served the people of Guam during some very difficult and lean times. But as we continue to add these additional budget burdens, I guess, if you will, to the government of Guam, we also hear from other parts of this room that, I don't want to say are rich, but that we're being conservative in our estimates. So, yeah, thank you for answering the questions, and I support the amendment. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Does anyone else like to speak on this amendment? Anyone would like to speak? Senator Paris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak more to, I guess, where the money is going to go according to this. And, I rise in support, with the rationale that was given, and as well as where the money is intended to go, which is the Chamorro Land Trust Survey Infrastructure Fund. And so we did pass the bill 288-37, which became law, to allow the the Infrastructure and Survey Fund, Chamorro Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund, to also participate in the USDA loans, which has very low interest rates of 1%. And
Point of order, Mr. Chair, that's out of order.
Thank you. Senator Paris? We're speaking specifically about the amendment, ma'am. If you can just stick to that. I understand what you're trying to get at by explaining where the money is coming, where it's intended, and trying to talk about other bills and laws, but we have to stick to just the amendment. It's only about increasing the revenue, so we just stick to that. Because when we get to that chapter, then we'll decide if that money will go there, if this amendment passes. Please, Senator Paris.
Okay, well, in that case, I would like to rise in support of this amendment. I think the reasons given shows that it's conservative enough. I know OFB is considered, I feel that they are, looking at the consistency of surpluses, and, to me, a lot of the questions were asked in regards to projections, and I felt that I was satisfied to see that, and including the CRER report, it supports that the collections are accurate, or it supports this projection, and I think it's, I rise in support of this.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Does anyone else like to speak to this amendment? No one else? Okay, are there any objection to
Oh,
this
Mr.
amendment?
Chair, if I could
Oh,
close.
may you close, make the closing,
Yeah,
please?
I
I'm
just
sorry.
want to state it another way. So right now, we're still in just showing July collections, not even August or September. We are already at 1.31 billion. That's more than what is projected for FY25 according to OFB. So it's just based on everything that they have said, very likely that we are going to exceed FY24 in FY25. And so what we're planning right now in FY25 is less than what we have already received in FY24 up until July. We still have 2 months to go. So I think matching at least, what we can anticipate, and we still have 27 million excess after that. So I think adding 10 million based on the estimates of all the excess revenue or under projection that we have made over the years is very, very conservative. It's pretty much we're going to meet our current year's tracking. Next year, when everybody's expecting us to receive more, you've said yourself, Mr. Chair, more tourists, more everything. So that's why I think it's a very conservative, actually, estimate to say that we are going to be very confident to receive 10 million more. And of course, the purpose of these things are very relevant. We have underfunded agencies. We need to find ways to take care of them all right now. And I don't think that they should be able to wait. This one is infrastructure that they can utilize to match with USDA almost immediately. And so I would like to see that in order to open up these residential housing lots so that they can put in sewer, divide the lots smaller, and do this now, not 10 years from now, but now. Start it today, and maybe we can get it done in a year. That's why, to me, it's important to try to take this very conservative, still, yet extra, just addition to what OFB has added on to the governor's estimates on her budget. So I ask my colleagues for their support for this. I think we can do all of the proposed things that we're planning. There is excess 24 money. This would just bump up the FY25 money a little bit. We might have excess 25 money if what they're saying is going to come true, and it sounds very likely. So I think, it's very optimistic. We can take care of all the proposed amendments, perhaps. We'll see. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any, that's us closing. Are there any objection to the amendment? I see one objection. All in favor, please raise your hand to the amendment. Amendment fails. Madam Speaker, you have 4 other amendments, ma'am.
Chair. The next one is on line 6, page 8. This is to it should just a one. Do you have one that says, notwithstanding 9, it's to new, D to section 5, chapter 1, notwithstanding any other provision in law of the first $9 million? No, sorry, not that one. Just give me a minute. These are the same. Here. It's file name SB 236 TMTL 6, page 8. This is a new D to Section 5. Section 5 deals with, I believe it deals with excess funds.
Madam Speaker, if we're talking about excess funds, rules of engagement, anything to do with excess funds of 24 is only be entertained on miscellaneous chapter. And if that's the case, then I would have to rule this out of order.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to appeal that because on Section 5, it's dealing with excess quarterly collections. It's exactly on point to what Section 5 talks about. And in Section 5, subsection C, it talks about all funds in excess of the adopted revenue levels in a certain revenue projection. And I'd like to do the same in the new subsection D. That is, I wanted to try to take it out of FY24 excess funds. That's my first amendment, Mr. Chair. And it's patterned after the language in subsection C, and it's directly fitting under revenue collections in excess of quarterly collections, which is Section 5.
Madam Speaker, I repeat, based on the rules of engagement, anything to do with excess funds that are related to FY24 will be ruled out of order, but will be entertained on the miscellaneous chapter. That's why, as you identified, enumerated in Public Law 37-42, which is FY24,
that's correct.
I will rule this out of order. All right?
All right, I'd like to appeal that, Mr. Chair.
All right? So technically, you're asking for the overrule of the chair, correct?
On that ruling.
On this ruling, okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, quick clarification. So you're saying that if it's excess funds from 2024, right?
That's correct.
You're saying that it should be in chapter?
Chapter 1 is about the revenue for 25. I made that very specific on the rules of engagement. I also said that anything to deal with FY24 excess or anything, we will entertain it on miscellaneous chapter. And there are several amendments in that chapter right now that we'll entertain then. So if anything is addressing 24, it's ruled out of order.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair,
Yes,
if I can provide some information. So the way this amendment reads, it's actually referring to the projected amount. It's not, oh wait.
Ma'am, I'm reading English just like you. It says, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, $10 million collected in excess of adopted revenues level enumerated in Public Law 37-42. Now, I'm going to ask if who's in favor of overruling the chair? Let's start with that. Is that 1, 2? Okay. My ruling stands. This one is out of order. We'll proceed to the next one. And we'll just go down the line.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I have a very similar amendment, and it's, I don't see the label on it, but it's $9 million. It's to appropriate, it's to reserve, as just what Section 5 does, is to reserve any excess that's collected over the revenues in this chapter. That $9 million of that is going to go to the Chamorro Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund. This provision shall continue, it says in the first quarter, and this provision shall continue quarterly until excess collections meet $9 million. And this is, again, is just $9 million. It will bring us pretty much equal to the collections in FY24. And we know that if we trust the projections that our team is relying on, that it's likely we're going to far exceed FY24 actual collections. And so this, again, is a way to help meet these infrastructure needs, which is really going to pay off in the long run for even, I think, revenue, Mr. Chair. So that's the amendment. 9 million from it's from the excess in FY25.
Correct.
And this only is appropriated if, of course, this excess comes in. So it's very safe, and it's not even a risk for any of us. And it's very consistent with what's going on in Section 5 of the bill, and that is they're saying what to do with excess revenues. They put some aside for a rainy day, then they talk about the reports that are going to have to be made. They said that if there's certain excess revenues in a certain fund, it will go to DPW for flooding. And so I'd just like to add this, that if there are excess revenues in FY25, based on these projections in this chapter, that it will go to this purpose as well.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this amendment? Senator Tyree?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one actually falls the same suit as, oh, how did my thing happen? Okay, hold on. Budget submit on the floor. Okay, here we go. This is the same language used in FY24 budget, and also that same language is used again in the FY25 proposed legislation for the budget. It does say, there is something different though. It says 12 months revenue budget based on the revenues estimated in Section 2. This one actually says the first quarter, so that's within the, I just want to ask a question to the author. Does that mean that within the first quarter, meaning the first, after 3 months, then once it's determined if there is $9 million, it's been reserved for this particular infrastructure? Okay, so yes, the answer is yes. Okay. You know, I do think it's important, you know, that to find this, find the infrastructure that's needed. And we know that there was 23,000 applicants that was already given land, but of that, only 175 were able to build. And a lot of it is due because of the cost of putting the infrastructure in. It's very costly. So, yeah, I just, I don't know if this is, I guess it has to be legal, because if it was in the last budget bill, and I think this is a Clinton Ridgell, if I'm not mistaken, Clinton Ridgell in the 35th Guam Legislature had incorporated this. Or was it 36? I can't remember one of the two. Yeah, 35th. But I was always wondering, how can we obligate funding for another, you know, it's just confusing. How can we obligate money that's not even been realized at this point? Legal's not here to give us an explanation, but I do stand in support of the intent of this. There's no doubt about it, the importance of having this infrastructure and the need that Chamorro Land Trust has been asking for. But I've always wondered, you know, I even questioned what we did in Section 5 last year. Was it Section 5? Yes. Whether we can obligate funding that has not even been realized. Other than that, I just wanted to make sure that this was in the first quarter, meaning the first 3 months, after the first 3 months of the FY25, if there's any excess revenue in it, and my question was answered. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Madam Vice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I look at the intent for this for Chamorro Land Trust and working with their, my take is there's a notwithstanding any other provision of law, the first 9 million collected in excess of the adopted revenues levels enumerated in this chapter as reported will go into the Chamorro Land Trust Survey and the Infrastructure Fund but I do know that there's another very critical and important amendment that will be coming up that would give funding to another critical fact, which is the hospital. And I don't know, maybe my question is would this precede anything going into the hospital if this amendment passes? I'm just worried about that.
I think we'll deal with one, and then when we get to the other, then we can ask that question.
No, but I'm asking her the question.
Okay. Madam Speaker, would you like to answer that question?
Because she has a notwithstanding provision that
Yes.
everything that comes in will go to this first over anything else. That's
Yep,
just-
and the next,
Sure.
and the next amendment will supersede that last one too. Madam Speaker?
I appreciate the question. It's a good question. So yes, that's the reason why the language in this one amendment says first quarter. It's intended that first it will go here, 9 million, because the hospital is going to be receiving money, and there is another amendment coming up that we'll talk about later, but it's also going to give excess revenues to the hospital. I've asked OFB and BBMR for any other source of revenue for the hospital. No one has proposed any. So I'm coming up with the one that I can find, and I'm not the OFB chair, and that is the excess, anything that we might receive in FY25 over what they've predicted. And so the reason we want it to go first here, or at least I'd like to see it go first here, is because the hospital has a huge appropriation, and if they can get their money, they can budget that out while they wait for second quarter if they have to. Or if there's enough in first quarter, they will get it in first quarter. If not, they'll get it in second quarter. But this one is because they can't even divide the lots without knowing where they're going to put in sewer or not. And sewer is really critical in order to know how many lots they're going to be able to divide. And this is going to set them on this path of being able to turn these properties around finally. It's going to be their first project. It's going to get them USDA, hopefully, into their operating procedures, or their way of doing business, and just continue to do all their huge tracts of land like that. But if they can't start one immediately, I don't think we're going to see progress in the entire year, and that's why I think they need to get it right away so they will know they can put in sewer, they can count on that, they can divide the lots smaller, and they can proceed to partner with USDA, which takes a little while as well, but it will get them to start. And any other additional money that comes in, I'm hoping to appropriate that to GMH as well, because I'm still confident, based on what they're saying, that we are only expending what we have already collected in FY24 right now. And if FY25 is as great as they've set it out to be, then we are going to collect I think we were collecting way over 30 million for sure in one of our first quarters last year in excess. So I can't predict that, but I'm saying if it comes in, this is no risk to us, but it will help to take care of this and the hospital. Thank you, Madam Vice.
Madam Vice, does that suffice your inquiry?
Mr. Chair, I thank the sponsor for her response on this, but the priority of funding to the hospital or to Moral Land Trust for me is something that I have to weigh very critically, because as I look at this amendment, it prevents, I think, GMH from receiving additional funds because CLTC is being sent to the front of the line. And that's my understanding. I mean, we wish, right, there was a parallel track, but Mr. Chair, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this with, and just having some, honestly, some reservation when I think both is really good, but who's more critical than what, right? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair. I rise in support of the amendment, and I commend the author for being creative with it. And also, and when we talk about need, obviously this would go to address one of the biggest needs on our island, and that's affordable housing. So I rise in support of the amendment, and por favor, ask my colleagues to do the same. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Anyone else? Senator Perez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. I think it's really clear that one of the biggest hurdles affecting Chamorro Land Trust beneficiaries is access to infrastructure. And, you know, we hear about, you know, years and years of thousands of Chamorro Land Trust beneficiaries not being able to get these leases. You know, this is a long time coming, something that's desperately needed, you know, since, you know, these are since the beginning of the Chamorro Land Trust, before some of us even were born here in this hall. You know, I think this is something that, you know, the author has been very committed to providing housing, affordable housing for people that, you know, for our population that's in desperate need. You know, we can't turn a blind eye to how difficult it is to find affordable living spaces here. And, you know, I think this is a need that needs to be met. And especially since we passed a law, this body passed a law that would allow for low interest loans, USDA low interest loans, and this would definitely, you know, open the gates and, you know, help solve this problem that's been a long-standing issue in our community. And so I rise in support to Duzmasi.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Senator Blouse.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. You know, I look at the language that's contained in Section 5, and you look at the language here that's proposed to add a new subsection, and I'm assuming this is going to be, hang on, let me just make sure I'm getting the right one. New Section D. Section C starts with notwithstanding any other provision of law. Then Section D starts with the proposed new section that says notwithstanding any other provision of law. I mean, so which notwithstanding trumps which notwithstanding?
I'll yield to that, Mr. Chair.
Please do, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, so in subsection C, it's funds in excess of those in section 2.2Q. So it's a very particular revenue. That's the highway fund. And on my amendment, it's, you know, revenues levels enumerated in section 2, capital I, capital A. That's the BPT. Or that's the, sorry, that's the taxes. So that's not the highway fund, it's the taxes. So it's a very particular, so they're two different, so they don't conflict with each other. They won't interfere with each other either. Two different sources of revenue.
Does that suffice?
So if this is going to be, so what you're saying here is that this is just going to provide, I mean, the excess is just going to be specific to a certain revenue source within the entire budget, which is the BPT.
Which is all taxes, sir. All taxes.
All,
Two
all,
IA taxes, yeah.
all taxes. Oh. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? There being no one else, do we have an objection to this? Madam, you want to close? Want to close?
Yes.
Madam Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for your consideration. And again, I just want to clarify. So this is going to take excess taxes collected only if we receive excess taxes. If we don't, there's no risk to anyone by this amendment. No other agency will be defunded in order to fund this affordable housing project. Also, the CLTC, while we have set them up with potentials for leases, we have seen the problems that they have, and it is going to take them a little while to fix those. We've given them the ability to collect on submerged cables. That's not going to come in, it looks like, in the first 6 months of FY25. So we're trying to get this cash matched to them as soon as possible before those revenues come in. And hopefully after those revenues start coming in, they won't need this type of thing. They will be set in their process, and they will know how to work with USDA for their projects. And the other thing, in addition to the need for this affordable housing projects, it doesn't conflict with our wish to also give GMH. And I'm just discovering, the more I look at the budget, about the health care and the lack of funding for them based on what they have asked for. And that is not the CLTC's fault either. And according to BBMR and DOA, they don't need to give GMH any more money. OFB gave them $7 million more than last year, but and they all want GMH to rely on their collections. They have a larger budget cushion, so they can last for the first quarter with their entire budget. And also, ARP funds can be used for the hospital. And so what I'm hoping is if we are able to appropriate any more to the hospital, or perhaps that's why the governor didn't see fit to give any more than $1.some million extra from FY24 to FY25 to GMH. But if we can give them more and the governor can match that with ARP, then they might get closer to the $73 million that they said was absolutely necessary to meet critical services. So, and I do have an amendment for them, so I don't think this conflicts with that at all. They're complementary to each other. They're complementary to the other direction that we've put for public works, for flooding. All of these are complementary to each other, and I believe that we can try to take care of all of them. And that's, of course, if excess revenues come in. And that's all the risk I'm asking you to take, is to put your vote onto this, because otherwise none of your agencies is going to be cut. No projects, other projects will be cut. It's just really if the money comes in. And so that's why it's set up like this with the language first quarter, to go there first. Yes, because I think we need to get that project moving now, or we will not see any new affordable housing in the entire fiscal year 2025. And I believe, based on their estimates, we can do both. We can also go way above and beyond the governor and OFB, all of us together with OFB. We can also dedicate additional funds to the hospital. Mr. Chair, and to my colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Are there any objections to this amendment? There is one. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails. Madam Speaker, you have another amendment, ma'am? You have two amendments, ma'am. Man, will speak it, please. Your two amendments?
All right, yeah. So I haven't,
Colleagues, we need to wrap up chapter 1. I'm really hoping that Monday we're in chapter 2. Okay? So if everybody can just stand by, I only got 2 amendments, please. Madam Speaker, if you can go ahead and continue on with your amendments so we can move along.
sure. I have an amendment. It's, again, to Section 5 of Chapter 1 of the bill to read, notwithstanding any other provision of law, 15,828,000 collected in excess of the adopted revenue levels enumerated in Public Law 3742, as reported in the CRER, is hereby appropriated to the Guam Power Authority for a 3-month extension to the Procurement Azuda Paritautauta Energy Credit Program.
You're referring to your energy credit program, correct, ma'am?
That's correct. It's a 3-month extension to the energy credit, which ends, I believe, at the end of the fiscal year. So this would extend it for the first quarter of the next fiscal year. It's 15 million, and this again is if there is excess revenues. It wasn't put into the governor's budget. It wasn't put into OFB's budget. So this is if there are excess revenues collected in excess of what you are all predicting, that this will go there.
Madam Speaker, based on the rules of engagement, you remember I do support the
Oh, I see,
power
it says
power credit,
3742, yeah.
So that being, I'm going to rule it out of order, okay?
Mr.
I
Chair,
support the power rebate.
Can I just amend that, though, to read FY2025? So it should be the same as the other language, the,
It's the same as the first one that,
yeah. Adopted revenue levels enumerated in Section 2(1)A.
I'm going to ask the body if they'll allow for her to make the amendment. It's a simple amendment, but I don't, last one didn't, but well, I ruled out order. She asked if she can amend it just to reflect the Section 2(1)A of this chapter from the Public Law 37-42. Ma'am? Is there any objection to her asking to amend it? Put the change that the statement that says in excess of adopted revenues, after adopted revenues levels, striking enumerating Public Law 37-42 and putting in Section 2(1)A of this chapter as reported, as was listed on the other bill, on the other amendment. Are there any objection to that? No objection? Okay, so it's amended. So you want to go ahead and continue, or
No.
You're done? Mm-hmm. Are there anyone who want to speak on this amendment? None. Are there any objection to this amendment? There is an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails. We're now on the last amendment, ma'am. Which is similar to your, ma'am.
I'm going to hold off on this one, Mr. Chair.
You're going to hold off on it?
Yeah, to the other
Okay.
chapter.
All right, that being said, my colleagues, we have completed Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is now closed. Come Monday morning, we meet here at 9 o'clock, and I hope to end by 6 Monday. If we can timely move along, we'll end earlier. But please keep in mind, my colleagues, other than that, we, the incumbents that are up for election, we may be pulling our placement in the ballots on Monday evening. So we need to, okay, the announcement came out, it's tentative, but I believe it's going to happen Monday. That being said, we'll meet here at 9 o'clock on Monday. Thank you.